Hi guys, today I'm going to show you how to make some West Indian or Trinidadian style stewing pork or stew pork. And so what you're going to need is you're going to need a can of red beans. You're going to need 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. You're going to need 1 tablespoon of ketchup. You're going to need 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. And you're going to need some brown sugar, about 3 tablespoons. You're going to need some vegetable oil. And you're going to need 3 cloves of garlic, half an onion, chopped. And you're going to need some pork ribs. So let's start. You can just roughly cut up the onions. It doesn't have to be super fine. And then put it in a bowl aside for when it will be needed. Next, when you're cutting ribs, the best way to cut it is turn it over bone side so you can see in between the ribs and so that you'll be able to cut it. And so once you cut the ribs, just put it in a bowl. I'm cutting about 2 pounds of ribs here. I'm cooking for 5. You can cook smaller amounts. If you're just 2 people, you can just do a pound of ribs. But I'm cooking for 5 today. So, well, I cook for 5 every day. I have 3 boys, and this is a great meal. It's quick to do, and it's easy. And if you can't see the bones, you can just flip it up. You'll see in between. And this little tail here of the ribs, I'm just cutting it into smaller bite size, but it's going to be nice. It's going to be coming off the bone really easily when it's cooked, and you're really going to enjoy it. If you want, you can trim it down slightly. All right, so I have my bowl of pork. It's all been cut up. And so, oh, and one thing we're going to use today as well is everything spice. So we're going to need 2 tablespoons of that. So let me just wash my hands. So in the bowl, you're going to take 2 tablespoons, rounded. You're going to sprinkle it all over the pork. Then you're going to take your soy sauce, this one here, 2 tablespoons. You're going to pour it on. Then you're going to take the ketchup. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to pour it in. And then lastly, you're going to put the Worcestershire sauce. All right. So you're going to mix it all together. And try to, get it everywhere. A lot of the soy sauce and everything goes down to the bottom. You just want to try to get it evenly across. If you don't want to use your hands, and if I was using a bigger bowl, I think I would have probably used a spoon or 2 forks to blend all of these flavors together. You don't need to let it sit for a long time. As you can see, it didn't take long for me to blend all the ingredients, and we're going to start cooking right away. All right, so now I've put the 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil in. I'm going to turn up the stove to maximum. You want to get the oil really hot. And the first thing you want to do is, once it gets hot, you want to put in 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. Right now I'm using a cast aluminum pot, which I stew or I curry in. You can actually get that on my website at often.Once. Yeah, so right now we're just waiting till the oil gets a little hotter, and we can put in 2 pretty round tablespoons of brown sugar. Doesn't have to be exact, but that's exactly what we need. So while it's getting hot, you want to just break up the brown sugar. Sometimes there's these little clumps inside, and you want to mix it and get all of the brown sugar absorbed by the oil. And you just got to be a little bit patient, and you'll slowly see the composition of the brown sugar changing. And you just got to be patient. And as you can see, it's already starting to bubble slightly. The oil is getting hot enough. Soon you're going to see what I was talking about in regards to the composition changing. Getting a little bit of bubbling happening. It's really important to break up those clumps, because when you do finally put the meat inside, you don't want these clumps in there, because those clumps won't break down. As you can see, it's starting to cook, and what you want to do is you want to brown the brown sugar a little further. So the consistency is not quite there yet, but it's getting there. So I normally just push everything in the center. And I'm still patting it out. All right, so at this point, I always put my onion and garlic. And you fry it in the brown sugar. So as you can see, the brown sugar is starting to clump up. It's gotten a little darker. Don't worry about that. You want that to happen. And what you want to do is you want to have this mix properly. As you can see, it's starting to turn brown, which is nice. Now, there's a number of ways that you can make, stew pork. This is my way of doing it. All right. So now that it's all browned up a little nicer, you just keep going just a little further. You don't want it burnt, but you do want it brown. But you don't want it completely brown. Like burnt wise, I mean. And all right, so now we're at a stage where we can put our pork in. So carefully turn. You want to get all of this pork with the brown sugar in it. What you're doing is you're coating the pork so that it takes on the flavors of the brown sugar and the onion and whatnot. As you can see, it's starting to brown. That's what you want. You want it to brown everywhere. In a sense, you're searing the bones or the ribs. Now, stew pork, this could be cooked a number of ways. You don't actually have to cook it just with pork. I make stew chicken, stew pork, stew lamb. It pretty much works with any meat, but I prefer it with pork or chicken. You just want to get each meat or each piece of meat a chance to be at the bottom so that we can brown it. So I'm just going to put the lid on, let it cook a little bit, and then I'm going to continue to stir it. Don't worry, it's not going to burn. Meanwhile, you want to, at this point, open up your can of red beans. You're not going to put it in right away. This has to cook for a little bit longer. But I'll give you instructions as well on the video on how to cook this. Yeah, I use Unico red beans. The red kidney beans are pretty consistent every single time. Let me just stir this pot again. So when you open up the can, you don't drain the red beans. Now there's a few methods. I cook it in two ways. This way, I'm cooking it right now is because I want a lot of sauce. And I'm going to be cooking rice later to accompany what we just made. Typically it is used with rice. And when you open up the can, there's a little bit of liquid in here. Don't throw it out. You need it. And let's stir this up a little again. As you can see, starting to get nice and dark. Starting to smell really good. And if you see any pieces of pork that's sticking out to you that looks a little bit red, as you saw, I just kind of picked it up, tossed it to the side, and pushed it underneath because you want to have it all the sugar all over the pork. So at this point, we've been cooking for about 5 minutes. It's nowhere done yet. However, you want to turn it down to a medium heat. I really love these pots because with some meals, without the lid, but with some meals you can actually put the entire pot in the oven and bake with this pot. So it's actually a really good pot. So this one here, it has a little bit of red on the outside of it, so I'm just going to kind of toss it underneath because I want to get that nice and cooked. And if anybody has had stew pork out there who is cooking this and make it any differently, let me know send me an email or comment below, because this is one of many methods. Every West Indian out there cooks their stew pork a little differently, and so this is my version, and yeah, and this is my favorite version anyways. So you can't see it really, but there's a little bit of liquid starting to form. That's the liquid that's coming out of the bones. And see, I'll pull it back a little bit. You can see down here at the bottom that there's liquid. That's the blood coming out of the bones, and so this will slowly get more and more juice. And then when we add the red beans in there, we're going to get more juice as well. So this has to continue to cook. The reason why I'm using my lid, because I don't want the liquid to evaporate. I wanted to keep it inside there. And so if you're cooking without it, if you wanted to do a dry stew, you can remove the lid and cook the red kidney beans separately. But the way I'm doing it, I'm putting it in because I want to have a lot of liquid. It's nice for me that way. So as you can see, all of the ribs are nice and brown right now, and they are starting to pull away a little bit from the bone. And so we're going to need to encourage it a little bit more. And at this point, we're going to add the red beans. So you're going to pour the red beans in, right on top. Scoop everything out from the bottom. And because we're looking for a little bit more liquid, what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill the can halfway with hot water. And then pour it in. And you want to get those beans all mixed up inside. So it has a lot more liquid now. You're going to cover it. You're going to increase the heat a little bit because you want it to come back to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, you're going to drop it down to a medium heat or even to a low, depending on your oven, to a simmer. And it's got to simmer and cook for another 30 minutes. So as soon as you can see right here, it's to a boil. So you're going to stir it up. You're going to reduce it down to a simmer. And what you're going to do is, again, you're going to cook it at this point for 20 minutes, 30 minutes more. You want the meat to be pulling away. I might have to cook it for a little bit longer because I have more meat. But I'm going to turn it down. You can't just walk away from this because you don't want it to start sticking at the bottom or burning. So you're going to have to stir, every 4 or 5 minutes. Just stir it up, make sure everything gets mixed around, and continue to cook. So as you can see here, it's starting to pull away from the bone over here. That's what you're looking for. and just continue stirring and mixing everything together. And you can see the level of gravy that's up here. If if your pot is overflowing, leave the lid off. You can reduce it down. Right now I'm exactly where I need to be. And then when you're serving it up, you're gonna serve up with the beans and with the pork and the gravy is for the rice. And but I want to keep all this liquid in here because my boys love it. Also, I have it at a nice simmer. It's not boiling overly, and yeah, just needs to keep cooking. As you see here, it's starting to thicken up. Starting to look really good. And you stir it up. Meat's pulling away nicely. Here's an example of the meat pulling away from the bone. Here too. You can see over here on this big one that the meat is sliding back. You don't have to worry when you're stewing to overcook it, especially when you have so much liquid or gravy, because it's just stewing in the juices. So you don't have to worry about it getting dry or anything like that, but it's nearly done. At this point, when there's 20 minutes left in cooking, that's typically when I'm going to start the rice. Usually it's 2 cups of water to 1 cup of rice. So because I'm cooking for 5, I'm making 2 cups of rice. So I'll need 4 cups of water. All right, so it's looking good. As you can see here, the meat's really pulling away nicely. Stir it up, make sure nothing's sticking at the bottom. The meat's mostly floating to the top at this point, but you can see here with this rib, the meat has slid down. That means it's near done. About 5 more minutes of cooking and this will be ready to serve. Anyways, if you have any questions, send me a comment and I'll always respond. And until later, bye for now.